Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Meconoman at YouTube with a tank video. Getting some of these pumped out. The Trumpeter 172nd Brummbär German World War II late production self-propelled gun or tank hunter. I believe it's more of an SPG. Very obscure subject. Yet the make and build seems to be quite modern and up there. A very snazzy model. We're greeted with 8 very small symmetrical looking runners. There's enough wheels to do various variations, as well as slide molds for the hull and the bottom bit, which are normally the trickiest parts to assemble when you're gluing together individual sheets, such as your older Etsy and Imari models from way back. In the mix of goodies and bits and pieces, we also have rubber tracks, which were easy enough to work with, and a sheet of water slide decals that did the trick. Just your standard German armour insignia, nothing too special. Having to look around at the proportions, the detail, the bottom bit, which sometimes, if not most of the time, can be quite heavily neglected. It's very detailed, quite enjoyable so far. And the suspension also has roughly what appears to be everything required to depict the subject matter. These could take quite a while and the tedious process to chop everything up, clean it and put it into place. Being moulded in the space just leads you to glue the wheels on, and they should sit all there quite nice and straight without having that funny up-thing wheels being a bit wonky or posed in various shapes in a crooked manner. Heading straight to the very rear of the chassis, we're starting to stick on the smokestacks and small bits of detail, adding it to the very back of the assembly. The instructions are nicely spread out and very self-explanatory of each step that needs to be taken, though more than half of it is focused on the order and orientation of the wheels, as well as the correct wheels to stick on for the period and scheme that you are trying to achieve. Generally and guiltily not being that familiar with German armour of that period, I just stuck on what looked to be the coolest. These are the leftovers compared to what was stuck onto the model. The bottom half being completely finished, the rest of the detail and components were completely dedicated to detailing the hull and the assembly of the weapon system. It does appear that this is a very simplistic model, or at least the subject matter is, and everything is encapsulated in sheet metal with a few hatches, the machine gun and the cannon. Very short work was put into place to cut out said components, clean them up and put them in. There was no major flaws noticed, including sink marks or inappropriate nubs, and especially flash marks. Everything came out reasonably clean, and this whole assembly process to this point was just incredibly quick. Only a little nitpick is the rubber tracks were crap. Would have liked up-thing components or full assembled tracks. Would have been nice, something like what S model does, but that would lead it to being a bit too perfect. I could see that Trumpeter is aiming this for the casual modeler, weekend warrior, or kids. A lot of the not so fun aspects, except for the rubber, has been pretty much engineered out and puts all thought process and efforts into the more fun aspects of chucking it together, checking out the detail and playability as you do, and heading straight into painting and decaling same day, or even in just a few hours, finishing the whole model at an casual standard. The proportions and detail, after having a quick gander at reference materials, other examples, do seem to be absolutely spot on. Closer inspection, detail does seem to be a tad over-exaggerated, or more so raised, panels deepened, to have hand painters in mind to thickerly apply what's needed. For anyone that wants it a bit more closer, some sanding and whatnot would make quick work of that. After construction, immediately threw on some Tamiya primer to look around for any imperfections, really get the paint to bite into the surface, and Gaia Note Surface Evo oxidize rust for a nice undercolor. Utilising the Mr. Color Desert Tank modulation set, we got the sand colours down nicely, with each shade painted in various directions, and the darkest for underneath the hull and the lower edges. Giving the old airbrush a thorough clean, thinning these two lacquers at 50% capacity, hull red and a nice rust colour. Once I got some nice, very tight lines down pat on a piece of paper, started to pick out the camouflage as close to the box art as possible. Around the box in the instructions shows you the multiple angles of the scheme, so there's not much research or guessing required. Using the light and dark red, orange and light and dark green matches the modulation that was added earlier. The darker for the sides, lighter for the top. A touch of smoke black underneath the wheels and some of the lower bits, casting a shadow under the cannon and whatnot, followed by a roundup of future floor to gloss it up for the weathering step. Utilising a mix of Flame of War tiny decals and some custom jobs I've got laying around depicting a Girls and Panzer German school theme, was able to give this a bit of a nice fun fantasy twist. They slid straight over the gloss coat and a second quick touch up to seal it in with future again. As always, I've used the burnt iron to paint the trucks. It's just got that nice rust browny colours to show no worn look, as well as gunmetal, silver and some other bits and pieces to colour in the appropriate details as per instructions. This was all just picked up with a fine tip brush. The cannon tip was weathered slightly via airbrush, and weathering process include a couple of sludge wash coats from the Tamiya or SMS weathering ink sets, and picking up the edges with a weathering pencil, silver and black, just for that added definition. A touch of pigment from an actual makeup set to dirty up the wheels, tracks and underside. Each of these processes occurred over different sessions as to not mix, contaminate or bother each layer of weathering as well as its colouring, and some of the sessions even got sealed in either gloss or SMS matte clear, which at least got 2 coats of that and beautifully dulled down all the sheen and tones that were going on for that process. Came out quite ideal with just that touch of detailed weathering that could jump out from the camouflage but not overwhelm or wash out all the paintwork, which has happened to some of my earlier tank builds. This did take a little while longer in the painting and weathering process to achieve what I was going for. In the way of personal effort, I feel I've been doing pretty well with my tank builds this year. None of them turned out to be lemons quite yet. What I didn't like is the tracks didn't really meet up. little more time should have definitely been invested in that regards, and maybe the red special alternative scheme of the decals got a bit washed out from the ionized colouring of the camouflage. That aside, the weathering routes I'm heading down these days seem to be more focused on terrain elements and what would be affected, such as dust on the upper areas and mud on the lower areas, how the wheels are colour and whatnot. Overall, fairly pleased how this turned out. Definitely is not quite comparable to my other builds. The mistakes are definitely too obvious that I would not enter this in a competition. Still a lot more improving to do, especially for something of this small scale. However, it is a very large bit of plain surface to decorate. Could have done more. In the way of the kit itself, would definitely recommend. It was a lot of fun. It looks great. It's worth jumping into. I do want to extend in more Trumpeter armour pieces into the collection. I've got quite a bit in the stash. It's just when they get built, finished and displayed. Thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, stay tuned for further content. 1 to 2 videos every week. I do want to do more tanks, so there is a couple in the process, and there'll be a lot more built this year once major projects are concluded. Catch you guys later.